Hi. So I know you want to know how I did my makeup and just stare at its glory, but today's video is not going to be on makeup. It's going to be on another Netflix TV show review slash breakdown slash whatever the heck these are. And this is my third show out of the fourth one that I watched on Netflix. Third out of fourth. Last week I did Lost in Space. Now last week I thought like Lost in Space is a pretty good show. It's pretty underrated. It's not quite as popular on Netflix as some other shows on Netflix that are and don't deserve to be that popular. So personally, I think that Lost in Space deserves to be a little bit more on the popular side of Netflix, but that's just my opinion. And I think this show is kind of the same way. So this show is The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. So after I actually completed watching Lost in Space, this show came up in my Netflix recommendations. They recommended this show to me and I was like, it was already on my list. I kind of wanted to save it for last because I was terrified of it. But I decided to, Netflix is telling me something, let's get this over with. If you guys don't know, this Netflix TV series is actually based on a 1982 movie by Jim Henson of the same name, The Dark Crystal. So if you guys don't know who Jim Henson is, then you're living underneath a rock. Jim Henson is the guy who created the Muppets, Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy. In 1982, he decided that he wanted to create another movie, but with different puppets. He created it with a friend slash coworker slash business partner, Frank Oz. If you guys don't know who Frank Oz is either, you're kind of also living underneath a rock. Frank Oz kind of goes hand in hand with Jim Henson. If you watch the Muppet movies, or like, I have never watched the Muppet Show, but I watched a lot of the movies. His name appears a lot in the credits too. So I actually did watch this movie when I was a child. However, do I remember a single thing from the movie? No. Why? Because I was too terrified of the frickin' puppet. If you ever watched the movie, you know what I'm talking about. They're terrifying. Like, they are, I don't even, like, the feeling that I get when I remember that from my childhood is just... So the movie, I do remember the plot of the movie being kind of confusing to follow along with, but again, it's like I wasn't paying attention to the plot. I was too worried about, like the puppets coming to kill me in my sleep. I wasn't really worried about like what was even going on in the movie. I don't know if it's necessarily the movie's fault. I don't remember the movie that well, and I haven't watched it since because of childhood trauma. I have heard in the past that the movie, there's a lot of plot, there's a lot of details, there's just a lot that they're trying to do in the movie that it seems like such a short amount of time that all of it's kind of crammed together. So it would make more sense to make it into a TV series, which is what they did. Let's go ahead and talk about the plot. This story takes place in the fictional world of Thra, a world in which shares its life force with the Crystal of Truth. So Mother Agra, which is the caretaker of the crystal and sort of the mother of all the creatures in the land, so she entrusted the care of the crystal to a group of alien visitors called the Skeksis as she psychically travels the universe in searching the universe, you know how that goes. The Skeksis, however, they tricked her and used the power of the crystal for their own self-gain, which is trying to achieve immortality. In their attempts to gain everlasting life, they twist the crystal's energy and it kind of becomes what is known as the Dark Crystal. The Skeksis rule over the land and over the creatures of the land while Mother Agra has peaced out, most notably the Gelfling. The Gelfling are split into 7 different clans or factions so that they're kind of easier to control that way. In the Gelfling's eyes, the Skeksis are their ultimate rulers. They are the ones who take care of them. They follow the Skeksis' rule to a T. And because of this, there does tend to be tension between the different clans. Like they think there is a hierarchy within their clans, like a certain clan is higher than this one. The Skeksis really like that. They love to keep the chaos up within the Gelfling clans. So the story starts with 3 Gelflings, all from different clans. Rian, Brea, and Dee. Rian is a castle guard who witnesses the Skeksis killing his girlfriend and draining her life force for them to eat and drink and all this other stuff, which is a very terrifying moment. But he ends up getting caught, so he has to go on the run. And then Dee, she is chosen by this mystical tree. She witnesses what is called the darkening happening, which is turning the creatures of Thra into basically dark creatures. Dee is chosen by this mystical tree called the Sanctuary Tree within her clan to go topside and to kind of spread the news to like their capital, which is called Harar. I don't know how to say it. And then Brea, she is a princess of the Vapra clan, which is like the top clan. Her mother is called the Allmother, which is like she's like the queen of all the other clans. So she is the princess, she's the youngest princess, and she, whenever the Skeksis come to visit, she begins to realize that the Skeksis are kind of trash. So she begins to question their law, and at this moment she discovers a mystical symbol which leads her on the path to discover the truth about the Skeksis. So the three of these Gelfling kind of join up to spread the truth about their overrulers and kind of start a rebellion against them. That's just the most basic of the plot. I can't, like, there's a lot more going on, but the most basic idea of it, that's what's happening. The first thing to definitely do when watching a show like this is to forget that you're watching puppets. Like I said, the original movie terrified me. When I seen this one, I was like, oh god. I knew I had to watch it, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. And it certainly wasn't easy for me to watch these puppet faces act. And they look so human-like, but they're not. And just to watch them act with, like, emotions, it's so weird. It feels almost like you're in an alternate reality, and it's just, you have to get over that fact. Because for me personally, I hated it when they did close-ups, and I was like, okay, can we not? But even with that hesitation, there was still, like, I needed to finish the season. I finished this season in 2 days. It was I just couldn't stop watching. It was like a really good plot, and the story was going along really great. The characters were great. I was just really into the story, okay? I did have some problems with keeping up with the plot, but that was just me. That was me personally, because I'm stupid. And I'll tell you why. Because I had trouble differentiating between the three different puppets. Looking back at it, I'm like, one of them's green, the other one's a dude, and then the other one's like a white-haired princess. Like, how the hell did you not, idiot? But for some reason, I just could not, like, tell, particularly like Brea and Deet. So like for the first like 3 episodes, I'm like, what's going on? I have no idea what's going on. And like they'll show puppets and I'm like, I don't know who that is. Or like they'll show like secondary characters who kind of look like the other puppets. I'm just like, what's going on here? So I'm just really stupid. Is what I'm trying to say. For an average viewer who has a normal amount of brain cells, you'll be able to understand it perfectly fine. The plot itself, it was pretty easy to understand. They do a great job of explaining it, and it has just like a very intriguing plot line. They did a really great job of world building and setting up the world of Thra and sort of everything that's going on in the world. Everything else was splendid. And I really cannot wait to see the next season. This season kind of ends with the Gelflings standing up against the Skeksis, so it's going to be interesting to see what will happen after that. So let's go ahead and get into setting and tone. Everything in the Dark Crystal takes place in the fictional world of Thra. What's amazing about this is the set designs of everything, whether it be like outside in the woods, in caves, or the Skeksis castle, or just these different clan locations. Everything is just like so beautiful. I'll leave a link down in the description below where it'll kind of show like the process of creating Thra. The amount of work that went into it is like insane, and I just want to applaud them. And like the designs of the sets are very beautiful. Everything is just very beautiful, okay? For a Jim Henson production, Dark Crystal is very dark. It does have a very dark atmosphere to it. It's kind of surprising because, you know, you don't think of Jim Henson as the guy who would create such a dark story, but he did. Particularly when we're watching the Skeksis. Oh, they're so disgusting. Whenever we're watching the Skeksis on screen, like draining the life, it's so crazy how dark it is. Like, not only does the character design like makes you want to throw up, but it also gives you chills just to like watch them grow hungrier and greedier for Gelfling life force. And in the beginning they were kind of able to reserve the resources, but throughout the season they just grow hungrier and hungrier, and it really leaves like a sense of dread for the audience, because like I wouldn't really expect myself to feel sorry for a puppet, but like my butt is feeling sorry for a puppet, and it's like I feel dreadful for what's about to happen to these poor little puppets, and like they don't deserve that. This atmosphere of this show is just, it's very dark, but there is like a little beacon, a little light of hope at the end of the tunnel, that they can start a rebellion, they can fight against the Skeksis, and they can find a way to turn around the corruption of the crystal. Pace. So the Dark Crystal has a very nice pace to it, in my opinion. The season has 10 episodes to it, and they use it wisely to develop the story and develop the characters' plots. No time really feels wasted, as they spend it either like world building, plot building, character developing, establishing rules, or setting the plot into motion. As there are 3 main storylines split between Rian, Brea, and Deet, with juggling like multiple perspectives, it can be a little bit more difficult on the writers to keep things clear and concise. Sometimes it's a little harder to do than others. With 3 characters, it shouldn't be as hard to do, and they do a really good job of juggling between the 3 and showing them equally, while also not only just showing them, but the side characters as well. They do a great job of juggling between all of those. It definitely isn't hard to understand where we are in the story. I mean, unless you're like me and just very freaking stupid, but other than that, it's not that hard to understand where we are. So when the 3 actually meet and their paths converge, the plot does begin to pick up, but everything does feel like a natural progression. It only feels right that when the 3 finally join together, things would pick up. Overall, the show has a really good pace that isn't either like too fast or too slow, and it's just perfect, I think, for the story being told. So let's get into the characters. So the characters are surprisingly well developed. Most had fleshed out personalities, some more than others, of course, and there were times where the characters were relatable. Which is definitely saying something, because again, these are freaking puppets. They're not humans. These are puppets that look like humans, and the occasional puppet that does look absolutely terrifying. It's funny to say that some of these characters were relatable. So whilst the plot is enough to garner sympathy from the audience, it's really the characters that kind of pull you in for that emotional investment. Just to watch as the Skeksis do terrible things on screen to the Gelfling and to like the other creatures, it makes you just feel so sorry for them. Like I said, sympathetic. So some of the characters can be a little cartoonish, particularly the Skeksis. But that I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. Normally I don't like it when villains are like the cartoon villains. However, for the storyline and for the story being told, I think it works pretty well. They're not like overly cartoonish, don't get me wrong, but there are times when they act very cartoonish, and I think it really works for the story. You know, this is a fantasy drama that takes place in a puppet universe. There's going to be dramatics and flair. So most of the main characters have interesting storylines, even the Skeksis. It's interesting to get invested into these characters and the Gelflings around them. I think Deet and Brea. Rian's kind of like a little lackluster for me, but that's just me personally. I really, I think related most to Deet and, well, the most I related to was Brea. But I really like Deet's character. I want to protect her at all cost is the situation going on there. Mother Aughra is another one of my favorites. She's just hilarious. Like, she's one that I really relate to. She has like this crude sense of humor, and like it's very dark, but it's also like she's a wise old sage. She's just very funny and I love her. And it's kind of weird because she has the creepiest design, I think, out of all of them. So it's just so freaking weird to feel like I'm connected with her, because it's just like you look like a butthole. So let's start with Rian. So Rian, he is born to the captain of the castle, of the Skeksis castle guard. Rian's life was kind of bound to turn out the same way. He was going to be a guard. He was most likely going to follow in his father's footsteps as being the captain. However, things kind of change whenever he witnesses the death of his Gelfling girlfriend at the hands of the Skeksis. Like I said, they drain her life force and just eat it all up, and he witnesses it. Unfortunately, he gets caught. The Skeksis are kind of out on a manhunt for him, because if the secret gets out, obviously there's gonna be an uprising, and they want to keep their position as the kings of everything. Rian unfortunately has to go on the run for the rest of his life, basically. They twist the story into saying that Rian actually killed his girlfriend, so everybody thinks he's a murderer. He tries to go to his clan and tell them the truth of what was happening. Gelfling can do something that is called dream fasting, which is sharing their memories. The Skeksis spread this rumor that he has an infection with it, like you can't dream fast with him, otherwise you'll get crazy, you'll go crazy or something like that. But he ends up convincing a few to actually dream fast with him, and they see the truth of the matter, which is that the Skeksis are evil people. Definitely in the first half of the season, he tries to convince people that he is an innocent person and that he is not the person who killed his girlfriend, that the Skeksis are evil. Rian definitely has, well, he has one of the saddest storylines, I think, in the show. His girlfriend's killed, his father ends up dying for him. His clan kind of shuns him. Everybody thinks he's a murderer, especially in the beginning. He has a really tough time. In the second half of the season, he joins up with Brea and Deet on a journey to find a way to defeat the Skeksis. So the three travel to Circle of the Suns. So there they find a Skeksis actually, and his name is the Heretic, and he was actually outcasted by the other Skeksis, and they find what they call a mystic. The mystic is the other half of the Skeksis. So there they find the two of them. The two of them direct them to something called the dual glaive. The dual glaive is a weapon that can be used to kill the Skeksis. That was created, of course, by the Heretic and his counterpart, the Wanderer. So he becomes the one to wield this dual glaive, as he is like the one with the best training and the one with like the biggest personal vendetta against the Skeksis. It makes sense for him to be the one who wields the sword. I would say Rian, I mean, he has a lot of development in the first season, but within the second season, his character arc kind of slows down a little bit. I wouldn't say that he's a boring character or anything in that sense. It's just that compared to the other three especially, his character arc just kind of goes downhill and then kind of stays the same. Like, he doesn't really change from the beginning to the end. He's just kind of the same person, really, which isn't like a bad thing necessarily, because this is just the first season of a show that's probably going to have a lot more seasons to come. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, out of all the other characters, he probably has the least development. So Deet is an animal caretaker in the Groton clan. Now the Groton clan is considered to be the dirtiest of clans. They live in the caves. They do not come out and emerge on the surface. She has like this fondness for creatures and pretty much any and everything. She loves everything. She's just one of those characters that has like a very compassionate heart. So when she emerges to the surface for the first time ever, she must adjust to the world around her. She meets new creatures and beings, even ones that are like terrifying to look at. She still approaches them with curiosity and like compassion, like I said. On her journey, she meets Hup, who is a podling that accompanies her to Harar. The two form a quick friendship, and when she finds Brea and Rian, she's quick to form a bond with them too. And she especially catches the eye of Rian. Her innocent nature is definitely something that is adorable, and like I said, I've become overprotective of her. It makes me really nervous of what's going to happen throughout her journey. So her storyline becomes even more interesting when the tree gives her its powers after falling prey to the darkening. With this new power, she has the ability to stop the crystal's darkness and rebound it onto others. The last episode ends with her leaving the group in fear of her new powers. Dee is the one that changes the most from the first episode. So I'm really excited to see where her character will go next season. So Hup is one of my favorite side characters. He is just so funny. As a podling, he's supposed to be a servant to the Skeksis and the Gelfling, and isn't a creature that can really move up in the world. However, Hup is like, screw that, I'm doing what the heck I want to do. So he wants to become a castle guard. He decides to travel to Harar to go speak to the Almlodger, which is like the queen, and tell her like, please let me be a guard. On his way there, he runs into Deet and saves her from like this disgusting spider-like creature. Hup really becomes protective of her. One thing I love about his character is his personality. He's very funny. He does this thing where if he doesn't like somebody, he'll make a face at them, or in some cases he'll just like absolutely go wild on them. Like with Deet, if you insult Deet, he will go crazy on you. Hup does end up getting injured at the end trying to protect his friends and has to stay behind while the others go and search for the dual glaive. So in his time of healing, he spends it with the Heretic and his other half, the Wanderer. It's during this time that Deet gets her new power and separates herself from the group. So it'll be interesting to see if he'll make it back to the group and how he'll react to that. So the next one is Brea. So Brea is the youngest princess of the Vapra clan, considered to be the highest and best clan of all, closest to the Skeksis. So she spends most of her time in the library studying and learning anything she can among the books. Whenever two Skeksis come for tidings, first she gets stuck in a carriage with them, but then she kind of like witnesses their greed and their questionable practices. She goes back to the library. She just searches basically like their legal practices and questions their law out loud. Doing so activates a book that shows her a mystical symbol. She searches for answers to the symbol and discovers a hidden chamber underneath her mother's throne. So uncovering the mystery leads her to finding a stone creature called Lore that carries a message for her to find the Circle of the Suns. So Brea and Lore form a very close connection along the way. So when a Heretic kind of decommissions him, She's very hurt by it. Brea is definitely like the rebel princess, especially of her two sisters. Her oldest sister, she probably hates the most. Her sister doesn't approve of her rebellious nature, and she doesn't approve of her sister's stuck-up nature. And then of course there's the middle sister, who is kind of trying to relate to both of these two. She's kind of the warrior sister, and Brea definitely has the closest connection with her. Throughout her journey, she just constantly misses her mother. And then at the end, whenever she meets up with her sisters again, her middle sister unfortunately dies in her arms, which definitely leaves another like heartbroken moment with her. Her character is super easy to sympathize with, as she's thrown into the mix basically due to just curiosity. She loses a lot of loved ones. I really do like her character. It's nice to see somebody using brain cells in that universe. So Mother Aughra. So Mother Aughra was the caretaker of the crystal and over Thra. So she realizes the mistake she's made and tries desperately to connect with Thra once more. It takes her a while, but with the help of an old friend, she's able to open her third eye. Mother Aughra helps bring together the three main characters, Rian, Dee, and Brea. Mother Aughra is definitely like an old crone who made a terrible mistake, and throughout her story we see her learn from her mistake and her attempts to make it right. She doomed her home and all her children, but she'll stop at nothing to make sure the Skeksis are exposed and killed. So she may be a wise woman, but she still has many lessons to learn, which is always refreshing to see in a show like this. Skeksis and the Mystics. So the Skeksis are the overlords and rulers of Thra. After doing some experiments on the crystal, the energy splits the Skeksis apart, forming basically a good side and a bad side. Skeksis drive their counterparts, the Mystics, away so that they could continue manipulating the Gelfling and the creatures of Thra. The leader of the Skeksis is the Emperor, and he's the one who's trying to harness the energies, the Dark Crystal's dark energy, to use it against the creatures of Thra. There is the Ritual Master, who is kind of like in charge of all the ceremonies. There's the General, who is kind of in charge of battle plans. There's the Gourmand. I mean, I don't really know what he does. He just eats a lot is what we've seen of him so far. There is the Scroll Keeper. He is like the historian. Then there is the Collector. She's the one who goes and collects the tribunes. She's real nasty. She got a lot of boogers in her nose. The Ornamentalist. She's not one that we've seen of too often. She, I guess, designs the clothes. Then there is the Hunter. He is kind of like the bounty hunter of the group. He goes out and hunts people. Then we have the Heretic, who was originally the Conqueror. He was outcasted by the other Skeksis because he wanted to rejoin his other half. Chamberlain acts as the advisor to the Emperor, and he manipulates his way to the Emperor's favor. The Scientist is, as his name implies, the scientist of the group. He attempts to create ways to control and use the crystal, and is the one to discover that the Gelfling life force is yummy. I would say these two characters definitely garner the most sympathy from the audience. Although they're still very despicable characters, there are moments where you kind of feel sorry for them. Like the Scientist, he gets tortured and treated really horribly for something that isn't underneath his control. And then Chamberlain, he's definitely the least worst of the bunch. So whenever he manipulates his way around things, it's like, okay, he's trying to, like, he's not as evil as the other ones, and he's actually kind of trying to help sometimes. So it's, sometimes you even root Chamberlain on for the crazy things he does. For their other halves, the Mystics, there isn't really much known about them, as we haven't really explored their counterparts really all that much yet. We're only really introduced to two of them this season, which is the Wanderer and the Archer. The Archer is the one to help guide Mother Aughra to open her eyes. He's really just like a wise, honorable creature to his counterpart, the Hunter. The Wanderer is just kind of like this slow talking, slow moving, kind of almost like a hippie version of the Heretic. They're the only two that really join up to help the Gelfling cause at the moment. Again, I'm not sure what this show will have planned for them in the future, but for right now, those are really the only two that we know of. So for the dialogue, the characters can be cartoonish at times, but it does work well with the story. There is a lot of exposition, especially in the beginning with the dialogue, but it's not overpowering to the point of feeling like it's an actor just reciting lines. The world of Thra is new to most viewers. There's a lot going on. There's a lot that needs explanation. Exposition and dialogue is definitely the fastest way to get it over with. Besides, most of the time they usually support that with visuals, which is always a good thing, especially in a world with so much established lore and rules. There's a lot of wisdom in the show. When certain characters speak, like the Mystic, the Archer, they spew just like straight up facts and knowledge. I'm really like somebody who loves those types of characters who are just able to speak knowledge and speak truth, especially when you can relate it A, to your own life, and B, to the world around you. It makes you think. Again, the dialogue is solid. There's really no complaints here. So the final thoughts. I think the show is a very amazing show. I think you guys should check it out. And not even to mention the amount of effort and work that went in behind this show is just amazing. I just think we need to give this show a proper acknowledgement and the proper praise, especially to the crew behind it. Y'all did a great job. I hope you guys take my recommendation. If you guys want to, I do have a website. If you guys want to check that out, I'll leave a link down below. I have an article version of this video down there, so if you don't want to listen to me, you can just always read it down there. Anything else? Next week, I'm going to be doing The Witcher. I'm going to be doing a review for that. That is it for today's episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy, leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.